from London, this is The World Today.
Hello, I'm Jamie Owen. Welcome to the programme. Our top stories: more than a dozen Palestinians killed, including children, as Israel strikes a playground in a Gaza refugee camp. Our other headlines: what prospects for peace? Ceasefire talks brokered by Qatar and Egypt are said to be at a delicate stage. European leaders' plans for trade talks look set to be derailed as this escalating crisis in the Middle East is set to dominate their agenda. And the countdown is on, 100 days to the Olympics in France, but not everyone in Paris is happy. Officials in Gaza say more than a dozen people have now been killed, including a number of children, in an Israeli strike on a refugee camp. Reports suggest the strike targeted a children's playground close to a busy market. There have also been reports of strikes on the nearby Nusayrat refugee camp in Gaza City. Meanwhile, Qatar's Prime Minister says ceasefire negotiations between Hamas and Israel are at a delicate phase. Well, let's talk to our correspondent Akram Al-Satari, who's in Rafah. Akram, Palestinian authorities saying a large number of civilians killed in the last 24 hours. What more do you know?
Well, what we know about this particular spike in the number of people who are killed is that this is coupled and resulting because of the fact that the Israeli occupation forces have been intensifying their bombardment in all different parts of the Gaza Strip, starting from Beit Hanun and Beit Lahia to the very north of the Gaza Strip, and then Gaza Central area, Al-Maghazi refugee camp, which witnessed the killing of around 12 Palestinians because of a bombardment in a heavy area. Sheikh Radwan area also witnessed the killing of 12 Palestinians, while many others were injured in a bombardment near a very heavily populated and overcrowded area. Rafah also witnessed the killing of around 7 Palestinians in a bombardment that targeted a refugee camp as well. So in the last 24 hours, 4 refugee camps were targeted and more than 45 to 50 Palestinians were killed, while many others were injured. This is an increase in the intensity of the fight that is going on. They intensified the targeting in Nusayrat area. They were also targeting residential towers. They destroyed around 7 to 8 residential towers in an area that is called As-Salhi area, and that marks an increase in the military action in that area, increase in the number of people who are injured, increase of the number of the people who are killed, and also increase of the infrastructures, the streets and the houses and the facilities that are being destroyed by the Israeli occupation while the military operation is still continuous.
We're getting more details on the destruction of a fertility clinic which took place some time ago. Tell us about that.
Well, that fertility clinic is in an area that was totally destroyed, so it's not only the fertility clinic that was destroyed, the whole area was destroyed. It's one of the top clinics in the Gaza Strip. It's very well known, and as was mentioned in one of the reports, it was the hope for many of the families who had stored the sperms and who otherwise wouldn't have any other chance or opportunity to have offspring. Now the irony in the Gaza Strip that it's not the sperms anymore, it's the people who are suffering, it's even the parents who are not promised tomorrow because of the ongoing bombardment. The doctor who's running that clinic is also a social activist who was also engaging in many social initiatives for the support and upliftment of the people of Gaza, including those people who are deprived from having children because of some fertility issues. Now he lost all this. Now he lost this fertility clinic, and with that, thousands of the Gazans lost the hope that they would have children. However, as I told you, they are also struggling now. The parents who stored those are not sure they would even survive, or anyone in Gaza is not promised tomorrow because of the ongoing bombardment. So the loss is massive, but the people in Gaza are fearful from much more massive loss because of the ongoing bombardment. Their very personal safety is at risk, and is at risk because of that ongoing bombardment, and they're not sure they would ever survive to even have another opportunity to have children.
Akram, thank you for that. Our correspondent Akram Al-Satari in Rafah. That's the story then from Gaza. Let's take you next to Israel and talk to our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. Sarah, Hezbollah has claimed responsibility after a missile hit a small town in northern Israel. What further details do we know?
Jamie, this is a Bedouin village known as Arab al-Aramsheh. It happened a few hours ago, and over the last hour or so, the injury toll has risen. We know that 18 people have been wounded, one of those critically, with the injured airlifted to hospital. There's a very heavy military and also emergency service presence there now on the ground. You can see plumes of smoke rising into the sky. Now, what we do know is that the IDF has since come out to say that it is striking the source of this drone launch. It is believed to be an explosive-laden drone that slammed into this community centre, with the military also shelling other Hezbollah sites, which the army says is housing Hezbollah personnel. Now, according to Hezbollah, this was in response to a number of Israeli strikes over the last 24 hours that have killed some 2 Hezbollah commanders and a number of other Hezbollah personnel. So certainly a developing situation, and we may see this injury toll, potentially death toll, rise.
The shuttle diplomacy continues. The British and German foreign ministers are visiting Jerusalem. What have they been saying?
Certainly, Annalena Baerbock and also Lord Cameron here in the region, a number of extremely high-level meetings, including with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And, of course, this comes as Israel weighs its response to Saturday's unprecedented Iranian attack, which, of course, Jamie, saw these some 300 missiles, also drones, launched at Israel from Iran and other surrounding areas. Now, of course, these diplomats, they are calling for calm in the wake of this, amid real fear that this could see a major regional escalation. But we've heard from the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu that Israel will make its own decisions.
אני מודה לידידינו על תמיכתם בהגנת ישראל.
I thank our friends for their support in the defence of Israel, and I say this, both support in words and support in actions. They also have all kinds of suggestions and advice. I appreciate it, but I want to make it clear, we will make our own decisions, and the State of Israel will do everything necessary to defend itself.
Now, Baerbock and also Cameron, they are also calling for the immediate release of these some 130 Israeli hostages that do remain in the Gaza Strip. We've also heard from Qatar's Prime Minister. He's just come out to say that right now these talks to free these hostages and also for a ceasefire, that they are at a delicate stage. He says we are trying to address stumbling blocks and stalling. Jamie.
Sarah, thank you for that. Our correspondent Sarah Coates in Tel Aviv. Iran is marking Army Day, showcasing the country's military prowess. Extra security measures were put in place for this year's parade, held in a military base east of Tehran. Tensions are running high right across the region as fears grow of what, if any, action Israel will take in response to Iran's retaliatory strikes on Saturday. Our correspondent Ehsan Kivani reports.
Raisi attended today's military parade in Tehran on the occasion of the country's National Army Day, and he said Iran's retaliatory operation against Israel on April 13th, quote, shattered Israel's invincibility myth and proved that the regime's power is like a spider's web. It seems that while Israel has not made the final decision on how and where to respond, kind of war of words continue, especially here in Tehran. Today, Iran's commander of the Navy also said that the Navy is escorting Iranian commercial ships in the Red Sea. And he said that Iranian frigate is already present in the Gulf of Aden to be ready for any possible confrontation.
The escalating crisis in the Middle East is set to dominate discussions as European leaders meet in Brussels. The summit was originally meant to focus on making Europe's trade sector more competitive against the likes of the United States and China. But the agenda was ripped up following Iran's drone and missile strikes on Israel in response to that attack on their consulate in Syria. Let's talk to our correspondent Stuart Smith, watching events for us in Brussels. Stuart, realistically, just how much power, how much leverage or influence do EU leaders really have over how Israel responds?
Well, so far, when the EU has tried to leverage its diplomatic clout to try to prevent Israel, for example, undertaking certain military operations, it's largely proved unable to prevent that happening. But the European Union does hope that in having a clear message, a united message from 27 European Union member state leaders, that will go some way to trying to encourage Israel to de-escalate here. The High Representative, Josep Borrell, made very clear after speaking to the foreign ministers of the EU member states yesterday that there is one message they want to send to Israel, which is that they must de-escalate. He warns that we have to move away from the edge of the abyss. Neither the people of Gaza, nor the region, nor the world needs a war between Iran and Israel. And he said that all these leaders need to use all diplomatic means possible to try to make sure that the cycle of escalation does not continue. But one piece of legislation proposed by Spain and Ireland is still on the table and hasn't been unilaterally endorsed by EU member states, which means this proposal can't go forward, but it still exists. It's the one that would use the EU-Israel trade agreement and the threat of the EU tearing that up as leverage in these negotiations. But one thing the High Representative added is that Gaza cannot be forgotten in all of this talk about how to prevent escalation, something that EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen was reminded of earlier in the day.
Thank you very much, Ms.
Citizens arrest you are charged with aiding genocide in Gaza. You expressed total support for Israel at the beginning of this genocide.
Now, the fear for the European Union, as well as trying to encourage Israel to back off, is to send a message to Iran as well. And that's what these leaders will be discussing at the end of today and on Friday. What can be done to make sure Iran also has no desire to continue? Sanctions seem to be the talk of the town here, not leveraging new sanctions against Iran, but using existing ones which tackle drone exports to Russia as a way to use that framework to prevent drones and missiles being used again by Iran in this Israel-Gaza conflict.
Stuart, this gathering there, this summit was originally called to boost the EU's economic competitiveness, wasn't it? I mean, is that still on the agenda?
It is still on the agenda, despite, as you said, being overshadowed. The concern is that the European Union is falling behind when it comes to competitiveness to challenges like China and the United States. And what these leaders say they desperately want to arrange is some kind of overhaul of the single market in Europe that will make it much more competitive. That could extend to changing industry, changing regulation. A major complaint one high official here in the European Union said is still something small and medium-sized businesses are complaining about. That red tape, that over-regulation, and also to look at what the single market can be done in general, what could be changed to try and improve that competitiveness. But they did say this is the start of a long journey, and it's very strategic at the moment what they're discussing. There aren't any simple, clear policy proposals at this stage of that debate.
Stuart, thank you for that. Our correspondent Stuart Smith in Brussels. 13 people have been killed in a Russian strike on northern Ukraine. A multi-story building was hit in the city of Chernihiv early this morning. At least 60 other people were injured. A hospital and an education facility were also damaged. This is the latest in a series of drone and missile attacks by Russia across Ukraine that has left hundreds of people dead. Croatia is voting in its parliamentary election. The poll is seen as something of a test for the Prime Minister Andrej Plenković and his ruling Conservative Party. Opponents have accused the Croatian Democratic Union of corruption and nepotism. Opinion polls suggest no party will win an overall majority, meaning coalition talks after the vote are likely. China's Defense Minister Dong Jun has urged the United States to recognize Beijing's claim on the South China Sea and respect its territorial sovereignty. Dong held a video call with his US counterpart, Lord Austin, the first engagement they've had in 18 months. The two sides also discussed Taiwan and global security issues. You're watching CGTN, still ahead. Anticipation and frustration. 100 days countdown to the opening of the Paris Olympic Games. But not everyone is pleased.
Ever wondered what's the difference between a bear and a bull market? Where are the cash cows? And who are the lame ducks? And what exactly are black swans? Grey rhinos? And unicorn companies? Make sense of it all with Global Business, only on CGTN.
I think it should be more global cooperation.
I would like to hear more the voice of the developing countries.
Globalization has lifted more than 1 billion people out of poverty.
The green transition has to happen. It's a necessity.
Well, China and the United States are important powers in the world.
What unites us is much more than what divides us.
And I believe China is committed to this agenda.
Join me, Juliet Mann, to set the agenda at these times every weekend on CGTN.
Events have consequences. Words create impact.
One more offensive in a long line of battles that's been ongoing for more...
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots. Excuse us.
The world today matters for your world tomorrow.
The number of casualties is growing quickly.
This is one of the hardest hit towns in the region.
The world today, every day on CGTN.
Hello, welcome back. A reminder of our top stories. More than a dozen Palestinians killed, including children, as Israel strikes a playground in a Gaza refugee camp. Our other headlines: ceasefire talks brokered by Qatar and Egypt are said to be at a delicate stage. And European leaders' plans for trade talks look set to be derailed as the escalating crisis in the Middle East dominates their agenda. The Paris 2024 Olympics, 7 years in the making, is just now 100 days away. The French capital is putting the finishing touches in place ahead of welcoming athletes and fans from across the world. But as our correspondent Ross Cullen now reports, not all Parisians are happy.
Well, today marks 100 days until the Olympics opening ceremony on the River Seine here in Paris. Excitement is building, but there is some discontent. Some restaurants and bar owners are unsure of the conditions in which they'll be able to operate during the Games. And after complaints that the event prices were too high and beyond the reach of many budgets, 1 million free tickets have been given out to amateur athletes, people with disabilities and young people.
The River Seine will be one of the stars of this summer's Olympic Games, as the opening ceremony will take place on the water. But it's in the water where there have been problems. The quality of the water is low and bacteria levels are high. Long-distance swimming is set to take place in the Seine, but there is no certainty yet that it will be able to go ahead. The river is a working waterway, and tourist boats and cargo ships will be forced to alter their schedules. At times, the cereal barges that carry harvest grains down the river will have to stop running.
There will be an impact as it's high season, the peak season for tourists. It's also when we transport the biggest quantities of goods on the river, like cereals, during the harvest period. So it's peak season for all economic activity on the river. So we are going to have to stop those operations to allow the Games to take place.
Also along the river are the city's famed bouquinistes, the distinctive booksellers with their green kiosks. They have been running for more than 150 years, but they were ordered to move away from the city centre for the opening ceremony. They argued the uprooting would lead to a loss of revenue and be a disappointment for tourists.
The president stepped in and the booksellers had a reprieve, but it's a sign of the confusion and complexity surrounding security and access when you have a river as the centrepiece of an Olympic Games. The city's most famous street, the Champs-Élysées, will also play a starring role, and businesses in the area are hoping for an uptick in customers, despite anticipating problems with heightened security.
As soon as we start being blocked by barriers and having to show our pass, that could become frustrating. We as Parisians don't want that. And I'm not sure how the tourists will take it, having to show their passes at every corner. They will get fed up. They will go from point A to point B and won't take a stroll. That's what we're worried about.
With just over 3 months to go, the final arenas are being readied and the city is preparing to host the world-famous Games. But as with any major athletics event, there are always hurdles to overcome.
The Olympic flame has been lit and is now making its way to France, and the proper countdown to the Olympic and Paralympic Games is underway. Ross Cullen, CGTN, Paris.
Voters in the Solomon Islands have voted in an election that could reshape geopolitics in the Pacific. The results are being closely monitored in the region after China signed a security pact with the Solomon Islands 2 years ago. International election observers will monitor vote counting. The outcome may not be known for several days. Myanmar's military government says the former leader Aung San Suu Kyi has been transferred from prison to house arrest as the country endures a severe heat wave. The 78-year-old has been imprisoned since the military overthrew her government in 2021. This comes as authorities pardon 3,000 prisoners to mark the country's New Year holiday. Authorities in the United Arab Emirates are clearing up the debris after the heaviest rainfall in 75 years. The torrential downpour killed at least one person and has caused extensive damage to homes and businesses. Dubai International Airport, one of the world's busiest, faced significant disruption. Heavy rain has also affected other parts of the Gulf, including Oman, where at least 20 people were killed. The first 7 jurors have been selected to serve on Donald Trump's hush money criminal trial. Candidates faced a series of questions as the court seeks to find a pool of impartial jurors. The former US president denies allegations that he falsified business accounts to hide hush money payments to a porn actress. Trump claims the judge overseeing his case is conflicted. And immigration continues to be a top concern for voters in the United States in this election year. There's been an unprecedented number of people risking their lives attempting to cross from Mexico into Texas. Our correspondent Nitza Soledad Perez reports.
This is a tale of 2 officers patrolling the same river, the same border under 2 different governments and 2 different mandates.
Burglaries, criminal trespass, breaking into people's homes.
One on the American side, the other one on Mexican territory. Efrain Sanchez serves as a deputy sheriff of Maverick County in Eagle Pass, Texas.
Goes back to 2018.
I was born and raised here. There's been a lot more activity throughout the years, I guess, since back in the day. A lot more people, a lot more border patrol, a lot more law officers. Especially, I see more people in the streets, running all over the place.
Eagle Pass, Texas has emerged as a focal point of the recent surge in migration to the U.S. While migrant crossings have decreased from the end of last year due to heightened law enforcement, the numbers remain unprecedented.
We still get calls throughout the night, can you make rounds through that area? People spotted suspicious people walking by.
Every night?
Every once in a while, yeah, we still do. Not as much as I was used to, but we still get them calls. People now see anybody and they'll call it in, there's somebody walking. Matter of fact, right now, earlier today in the morning, I went to the store and one of them was like, hey, I saw a group of 10 people walking, passing the street.
Across the Rio Grande River, Jose Francisco Contreras leads the Civil Protection and Firefighters Department in Piedras Negras, Mexico. His team handles emergencies, fires, first responders, and potential drownings.
Una vez que lo arrastra uno la corriente, ya no te puedes parar.
Once the current takes hold of you, you can't stop because it's too strong. It drags you.
It's dangerous even when the water is not too high.
En el 2022 fue
2022 was a very tragic year. Now we're almost at 50 drowned people on this side of the river, the Mexican side.
According to Mexican officials, 72 people drowned attempting to cross the river in 2022. Last year, there were 59 deaths. There are no official numbers from the U.S. side. Contreras and his team try to convince migrants not to cross. Still, he tells me that stopping them from crossing and pursuing their American dreams is almost impossible.
I recommend that they wait a bit for the process to take place, for their paperwork, and to do it safely. It's not worth it to risk your pregnant wives, children, and babies drowning. We've had to recover bodies of babies and pregnant women for a dream that will never materialize.
We saw individuals crossing the river during our interview.
They will reach that point, and then they will not be able to cross. They will need to return. Fortunately, the river is shallow today.
But many of them do not return. They keep walking along the riverbank. That other side of the river is Mexico. This is an area that's easier for the undocumented migrants to make it to continental U.S. because, as you can see, there are no fences. There's no razor wire here. Commander Contreras worries about the migrant safety. Deputy Sheriff Sanchez is concerned about his neighborhood and family's safety in the U.S.
Because you don't know who's crossing, you don't know their background or anything like that. So it is, especially me that I have 2 kids. It is kind of scary, you know. You don't know who's gonna break in or who's doing what. I know they're trying to make a better living, but there's always a process of doing it.
These officers do not want migrants to continue crossing the U.S.-Mexico border. Their departments are depleted, their cities transformed, and their daily routines upended. Mitza Soledad Perez, CGTN, Eagle Pass, Texas.
The headlines again. More than a dozen Palestinians killed, including children, as Israel strikes a playground in a Gaza refugee camp. Our other headlines, ceasefire talks brokered by Qatar and Egypt are said to be at a delicate stage. And the countdown is on, 100 days to the Olympics in France. But there's anticipation and frustration in Paris. That is the world today. Thank you for watching. We're back with more news at the top of this hour. Coming up next, it's World Insight. For now, from all of the team in London, it's goodbye.
Hello and welcome to the weather forecast. I'm Tierney. We'll check out weather here in Europe over the next few days. We can notice that a huge low pressure system is likely to grip a vast majority of the continent, indicating quite a lot of precipitation to develop as we head into the weekend. And about the wet weather forecast here on Thursday, we're likely to see quite a lot of showers to develop here from UK all the way towards into the western portion of Russia, with a potential scattered winter mix set the stage here for several locations up in the north. And by Friday, there was no big change of the wet weather forecast, with more snow developing here for many locations up in the north, probably due to the colder temperatures. And temperature-wise, rather cold here for many locations up in the north, as most of the high temperatures will be about 5 to 10 degrees Celsius below freezing for both Thursday and Friday. And central portion will probably see the maximum temperatures just in the single digits. The warmest readings of high temperatures are likely to set the stage here for a vast majority of the Iberia Peninsula, where high temperatures will be running in the 20s for both Thursday and Friday, so please dress up accordingly. And about business and travel, showers for both London and Paris with high temperatures around 14 degrees Celsius on Friday, and a lot warmer here for the city of Madrid, as high temperatures will be as high as 24 degrees Celsius. However, the overnight low temperatures will be just in the single digits, so please stay warm during the morning and evening hours.